Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the Duology Voyager Spirit Walk, books 1 and 2. Book 1 is called Old Wounds, book 2 is called Enemy of My Enemy. I just read these back to back, which I don't normally do with book series. I normally do at least 1 month or sometimes a couple months in between, but occasionally I'll read like a duology like this back to back. I recently did this, well, not recently, about a year ago I did this with the duology, the Avatar duology for Deep Space Nine for Star Trek. And I decided to do that this time. One, because the books are short enough that I felt it warranted it, but also this is truly basically one book that was just split in the middle into two. It's an actual like duology that's like part 1 and part 2. You cannot really fully judge one without the other. So I'm going to be talking about both of them today. I'll try to stay as spoiler free as I can. But I will talk about general things about the post-Nemesis Voyager universe because there's a lot of context that needs to be had for this discussion. So the first thing I'll say is that I'm a big fan of Christy Golden. I think Christy Golden is a superb Star Trek writer, and Christy Golden, who wrote this, wrote about a dozen Star Trek novels, 12 or 13 in her tenure, and many of them were fantastic. She started in the 90s, right after Voyager had just aired. She started writing novels for them, and then she continued on until the show finished, and then she was given the reins to the Voyager universe for a couple years, and then she left to go write for Star Wars. And another writer, Kirsten Beyer, stepped in, and Kirsten wrote about a dozen novels, and Kirsten has had the reins ever since, although for a couple of years we haven't had any Voyager novels, but that's not a big deal for now. So I'll talk about quickly my thoughts on these books after I tell you my thoughts on the whole series. So she wrote specifically about Christy Golden's books. She wrote the book The Murdered Son, which was her first book, largely forgettable book. She wrote the book Marooned, which was actually pretty boring. So those are her bad books. Then these actually get better. The book novel 7 of 9 is a superb character analysis of the character of 7 of 9. It pairs really well with one of the TV episodes. I believe it's the TV episode The Raven. Really good job. This book, it's her shortest Trek book, but it really does a good job of analyzing 7 of 9. I think that's one of the reasons Christy Golden was one of the best 7 of 9 writers. Then she wrote, while the TV show was on, when the TV shows were going on, the writers did not have a huge amount of leeway. They couldn't tell the biggest stories. They couldn't tell huge things happening. However, there were times where they would grant an author or a couple of authors the opportunity to write something big. And this would happen occasionally in some of the series, especially it would happen during hiatus in between seasons, or if they knew the show was going to be completed. And so she had the opportunity to write the Dark Matters trilogy, Cloak and Dagger, Ghost Dance, and Shadow of Heaven, which was, if you compare it to the post-Nemesis books, the books that happened when the authors had total leeway, there were no boundaries. It's a bland trilogy. But when you think about it as a trilogy that happened while the TV show was being produced, I think this happened in the final year of the TV show. If you consider that as the as the context for it, this is a superb trilogy because she had certainly very limited what she could do, and yet she still was able to do a lot. Like there's some alpha quadrant stuff here, some delta quadrant stuff here. She packs quite a lot in for her not being allowed to do that much when the show was on. And then she wrote, probably her crowning jewel of the Voyager books. Right after the TV show ended, they gave her the reins to the universe, said, you write some Voyager books. And she wrote a duology called Homecoming and the Farther Shore. And if I'm being honest, if I'm going to say start reading Star Trek Voyager books, read this duology. This, especially if you finish the TV show. I love, my favorite episode of Voyager is the finale, Endgame. It's my favorite TV show finale. I think it did a superb job of wrapping everything up. And I think that Christy Golden just gets the characters. And when she wrote this duology, she just perfectly told the story they need to tell. And if you're a fan of Picard Season 3, you will probably enjoy this duology because there's some similarities to Picard Season 3. In actuality, this duology has some similarities to Picard Season 3 as well, which is really funny. I don't think that they actually read these books for their writing, but it's just kind of funny how similar, how much they line up. But this was a really good duology. And so after she wrote this, she wrote one novel that was not part of the Voyager line. And then this was her final duology that she wrote, Old Wounds and Enemy of My Enemy. And after she wrote this, she left and did other things. She's a great media tie-in author. In fact, she's won multiple awards for her media tie-in fiction. She later on would go to do Star Wars, and now she actually works at Blizzard for their World of Warcraft storytelling. And she's written novels there, but she also works on the game itself. And so this was her final Voyager duology. So now I've gotten all the context out of the way, let's talk about this. This duology is set about 6 months after the events of the show finale, and this duology was like immediately after, so it's about 6 months after this. And you're seeing the crew start to get into a rhythm in the Alpha Quadrant. Now, if you know about Star Trek's history generally, you know that they came back in the post-Nemesis universe, and then they basically didn't know what to do with the crew. And then when Kirsten Beyer took over after the big Destiny trilogy, they went in a totally different direction. Like, Kirsten took the steering wheel and did a complete 180 on the storyline. Total 180. But this was setting up ideas in the Alpha Quadrant of what Voyager would be like as any other ship. And you see Chakotay in this duology finally take control of the captaincy of Voyager. His first time being the captain, and so this is his first mission, and you see the prep he does, you see the kind of celebrations they have that now he's the captain, and then you see him actually starting to captain the ship. But you also see Voyager having slight tensions between the people who were on the Voyager crew before and people who are on the Voyager crew now, because it's kind of a mix of both. And then you also have the storytelling of you have Tom and B'Elanna who are on Bereth, and they're trying to figure out the prophecies and whether or not Morale is part of the prophecies. And then you have Janeway and Tuvok who are at Starfleet Academy and Starfleet Command, and then you have Seven and the Doctor who are working at a think tank, which is actually, I would love a whole novel of just the Seven and the Doctor doing stuff at the think tank. I think that is a brilliant idea that they never explored, because, as I said, they took the steering wheel and took it in the later books. But here you get to experience a little bit of each. And as I mentioned earlier, Christy Golden just gets the Voyager characters. She just understands them so well. She has a very good job of understanding dialogue and understanding voice. And so when you're reading these books, you feel like you're watching the show. These could have been episodes if they had gone into season 8 in the Alpha Quadrant, which they shouldn't have because season 7 finale, Endgame, was perfect. But you feel like these could have been TV episodes. And other characters show up in this duology. You get a little bit more of Chakotay's past. And the biggest knock against Chakotay in the TV show was that they basically didn't know what to do with him, so the only thing they did was make it about his heritage, being a Native American. And in book 1, that's actually not, like, Christy Golden starts exploring his character outside of that part of his heritage. It's there, but she starts exploring outside of it. And I was really excited because we were getting some great development on Chakotay. And then book 2, she makes it all about his heritage. And so it was a real, oh, come on, in that. At the same time, the plot line in book 1 is really a mystery, and it does a great job of slowly unfolding the mystery. And then at the end of the book, you basically like have the bum 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 moment. And then book two, it's all basically falling action. Or not falling action, but it's all right, we have this mystery. Let's try to stop the bad guys. And there is a secondary mystery in book two that was the best part of book two. But as a result, just have to be honest, book one is much superior to book two. I think book one as a whole is much more enjoyable to read and also sets things up well. Book two just doesn't deliver on things as well, and also the things it has to do within its own book just isn't as good. But it's still enjoyable. I still think that it's enjoyable. The first book I gave like a 7.5 out of 10, and the second book I gave like a 6 out of 10. So you can see the difference between them. These are still not top tier. I still think Christy Golden's top tier work is Homecoming and Farther Shore. Fantastic work. But this is still really good. These books are probably better than most of her work during the series. So I still really enjoy them. You meet some of the new characters, as I mentioned, and there's two new characters who really take the control. You have Kaz, Jerem Kaz, who is a Trill, who is the Doctor, and then he has a storyline working on his Trill stuff with the ship's counselor, Estelle. And then you also have Chakotay, who has a storyline with his sister, Sakaya, who is or Sakaya, I don't know how you pronounce it, I don't remember from the show, who is on the cover here, so it's not a spoiler, that's Sakaya. And they have a storyline going on in the duology. And I thought their storyline, which was pretty good in book one, would fade in book two in favor of Tom's storyline, and it doesn't. Even though they put Tom and this Cardassian on book two, and I won't say why there's a Cardassian on book two, but even though they put them on there, the real focus of the entire duology is Chakotay and Sakaya, and of course the other two new characters, but they didn't have images for those new characters. And I feel like Tom should have gotten more. Tom is... They don't trust Tom to be the commander on the same ship as Chakotay, to be the first officer. They said, we're willing to take a risk on Chakotay, and we're willing to take a risk on Tom Paris, but we are not willing to take a risk on both of them at the same time. And so because of that, Tom just doesn't have a ship at the moment. And Janeway's trying to help him out with stuff, but he just doesn't have... And then an opportunity comes where... there is an element of who is the imposter, and or what is the imposter. They basically know that there's an imposter on the ship, but they don't, and they know who it is, but they don't know what the imposter, like why the imposter. It's the I'll do you in better. Why is Gamora? Why is imposter? They don't know the why or the what. They just know the who. And so that story mystery is the best part of book two, and Tom is sent to come and basically help with the mystery, but he never actually does anything of real value. He kind of arrives right as like he's no longer needed, and he does something like only Tom Paris could do this with the ship, and it's supposed to be this big character moment. But A, it all happens off screen and off the page, I should say, and B, it's not actually that important. Another character could have done it and should have done it, in my opinion. Tom should have done things differently rather than just come in and do what he does. There is another course of action that would have been even more impactful, that would have made the ending make more sense, and would have made the fans feel more like, hey, this is good, we appreciate this. And maybe there is like an in-universe reason why he doesn't. Maybe there was like hey, in Starfleet, we don't allow this. But that's what that other thing that I'm talking about should have happened. It's too bad I don't do spoilers on this thing, because I have a lot of spoiler thoughts, but I won't get into them. So as a whole, I really enjoy this duology. It's just not a favorite. I think book one's better. There is a sequence of book one that like you put on the music of Leaving Space Dock from Stephen Barton to the moment where Voyager leaves Space Dock. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It fits perfectly. And then there's sequences on the ship that you just put in some of that Voyager background music that Jay Chataway did, or you put in the Voyager theme that Jerry Goldsmith did, oh, it'd be fantastic. Because these books, as I said, they just feel like Voyager. And, I always get flack for saying this, but Voyager is my favorite Star Trek show, and I always say Janeway is my captain. And so I love, and I love the crew, I love the cast, I love everything about Voyager. The show, I think the plots aren't the best, but I love Voyager. And so it's so nice to see the dialogue done well. Because I think that, other authors, the two main Voyager authors are Christy and Kirsten. During the run of the show, people would get a single novel here or there for Voyager. But that was during the time when the show was on and they weren't able to do much. And Kirsten starts out superb with her Full Circle series. Like the first four books in the Full Circle series are amazing. And then she starts taking the characters in different directions, and I didn't love it. And then she just kind of ends it. And I did not appreciate the way it ends. I did not appreciate the way it ends. So it's so nice to go back to that feeling of this is perfectly feeling like Voyager, even though the books have problems. So I'll give the overall series like a 7 out of 10. The overall duology, but still remember, first book's like a 7.5, second book's like a 6-ish. So that's my thoughts on the Spirit Walk duology. If you've read this duology, what were your thoughts? Did you enjoy it like I did? Did you have similar problems to me? Or did you have entirely other problems, or did you hate it? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.